to the God Reports podcast. I'm your host, Sam Ellis, and today we're joined by an amazing guest, a guy that I had the opportunity to go see what he was doing on the ground. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, brother. Good to be with you and proud to be on this channel. Really going to be fun.
Yeah, let's dive in. So, take us back to the beginning. How did you first come to know Jesus? What was your life like before that? And how did meeting him change your life?
Okay. I grew up in the church most of my years, but personally, I made a decision to get serious about following Jesus in high school. Before that, I was showing up at church mainly to play basketball and to see Heidi because those were my two loves, and I wanted to be close to both. And those nets kind of brought me near, and over time and with some great leaders speaking into my life and just sharing what God had brought them through, I started to realize I wanted a real relationship. And so in high school, I got serious. Went on my first mission trip to the Philippines my senior year of high school. And on that trip, I felt like I really experienced God's heart for all people. I knew He loved me. We used to sing, "Yes, Jesus loves me," but there was a bigness to what I experienced on that trip. How could He love everyone at the same time? And I watched it happen. I experienced it. So I wanted to dedicate my life to missions. Loved the adventure of the nations, but really decided at that point to dedicate my life to missions, though I didn't know what that was going to look like down the road.
So, you and your wife, Heidi, have such a powerful partnership in ministry. Could you talk a little bit about how you guys met? Was it your shared faith that brought you together early on? What was that like?
Yeah, I wish she was here. She's definitely my better half. She's at work at the church right now, but um, the church I grew up in was her father and mother's church. We still It's our home church today. They've planted another church that we are attending now in Las Cruces, New Mexico. But initially, we were all in El Paso, Texas. My parents divorced when I was pretty young, and my mom had walked away from faith that had been instilled in her, kind of in the hippie days, went totally wild. And after the divorce, she just felt like she needed to get in church, and she had me and my young sister, and we were kind of facing a new chapter. And she wandered around town until she found a church, and the first church she found, she walked in and met Heidi's mom. And so, yeah, pretty radical. We became members right away. We came to that first Sunday. We got invited to Heidi's brother's birthday party. He's the same age as me, and the rest is history. They half raised me. Yeah,
Wow.
because my mom was working multiple jobs and stuff. Heidi's parents watched me a lot, took me in, and got to do fun stuff with the family. And I knew Heidi growing up. She knew me, but we fell in love in early high school and started dating. Dated for over 5 years, and then got married pretty young. I was 21, and she was 19. Yeah.
So, what led the two of you guys to Zambia?
Um, well, knowing that we wanted to do missions, her dad was highly involved in missions in Mexico, the Philippines, and I guess in '99 he got asked from three different very random sources within about 6 weeks to come to Zambia, and he didn't even know where it was on a map. Um, and he ended up going on kind of a planning trip, and then I got to go with him the second time he went. I was at the time working at a church in LA that had a massive, powerful worship department, Christian Assembly in Eagle Rock, and they were wanting to do a live recording over in Zambia. So I got to tag along and kind of help scout potential sites. And uh, 2001, that was my very first trip. I got to go and just see the nation. We traveled around a little bit, went to a few of the bigger cities and lots of villages, and of all the places I had been to that point and have been since then, there was just something different that captured me. And from that point, I really dreamed that we would one day live in Zambia. Um, it took a long time, and we ended up moving from California back to Texas to help with the missions arm of my father-in-law's organization. And at that point, I got to start going once a year, taking short-term teams and working with church partners over there. And then, yeah, long stories all over it, but just really great experiences in personal growth connected to that place. And I think one of the things was I early on I realized, man, we got powerful evangelists coming with us. These guys are beasts, and people are getting saved in droves. We got doctors doing outreach. I literally just watched a guy save someone's life. What the heck am I doing here? And I started wrestling with that, and I had a really wild experience way up north in Zambia one time. My father-in-law was preaching to a group of leaders. They were going through kind of a leadership seminar, and I had heard the same talk 6 times. So I stepped out so that I wouldn't fall asleep on the front row. And there were a bunch of kids outside, and I picked a mango because I didn't have a ball or any toys or anything with me, and we started playing a game that I invented that I joke is now the national sport called Mango Bola. And I had this sense, God just telling me what's happening here with these kids connecting like this is just as important as what's happening inside at that seminar. And it was kind of then that inside me, this idea of ministering to kids and youth as keys to the kingdom was born.
So I had the opportunity to go with you in the van to see one of these children's programs,
Yeah.
to kind of walk through and see just the fruit of meeting with these boys and everything.
Mhm.
It wasn't always like that. Walk us through like some struggles that you had early on.
I mean, I think anytime that you've got a lot of time invested in a place and you're just living as a learner, as time goes on, you're gonna get the right connections. You're gonna understand some cultural nuance. You're gonna get an idea of where you fit in the scheme of things in that place and setting. Um, but yeah, it really was all about showing up. I signed up for even before that word from God. I signed up for every mission trip I could go on. I don't know how many yards I mowed. Even as an adult, I was taking second jobs doing yard work just to get in front of leadership to ask if I could go on this trip. I'll pay my way. Let me go serve. I'll carry bags. And in the showing up, I was watching a lot and I was learning a lot. I was learning how to interact with partners cross culturally, and that the real learning of that happened on the field, which other missionaries would know. It's a dance, and it's humbling and can be frustrating, and it's kind of a long walk. But yeah, with kids in Zambia, the great thing is half of the nation is under the age of 15. Sadly, a lot of churches don't realize that. And so initially, we went to teach churches to speak the language of kids because they were missing out on half their population.
Wow.
Um, but yeah, anywhere you go, you can set up and have a great kids gathering. Now to speak their language and do church in a way that touches and impacts them and they want to come back. That was a learning process. But yeah, we've just had great partnerships over the years that have been really gracious with me. Um, yeah, and early on, you make a lot of mistakes or it's messier. It's still messy, but I think it's all about just showing up.
Yeah. So you lived in Zambia for a period of time as a family. You got four awesome boys that you were raising in the field.
Mhm.
You were doing your laundry on the line. You were doing it all. You were living like the Zambians. How was that? Talk a little bit about just what you experienced being a missionary on the ground and what it's like to be a father raising an incredible family.
Thank you. Yeah, I think my favorite role on earth, I wear a lot of hats, and my favorite hat to wear is father. I love being a dad to my four boys. And Heidi and I wouldn't trade our experience in Zambia for anything. We feel like those boys got the greatest worldview training ever. Getting to understand that what happens and how life is here in America is not the norm most of the world over is huge. And just getting to really develop core, not just say the word compassion, but to live in a way that we're actively being compassionate. Those kind of things were important to us. Um, Overall, we lived there 7 years. We were there about 2.5 years the first time we went, and then we came back for a time. At the end of that time is when I met you. Our family went to the Iris Harvest School 28, and straight from South Africa, where we ended that school, we went back in and we're in Zambia for another 4.5 years. Um, it was incredible. The first time we went, like I said, we were trying to help churches speak the language of kids. We were working at a community resource center where kids were highly valued. And all the time we were just kind of building the ideas of what we would do if we were ever in charge of something. And then the second time around is when Orchard Ministries was born. We were living on an orchard here in New Mexico before we left, and just running through these ditches around the pecan trees, thinking about how orchards are strategically planted and how people who own orchards get rich every year. We thought, what if we could help plant an orchard of people and churches strategically, and as the trees grow, they're shaped different and they look different, and everyone has their uniqueness, and we want to value that. And then at the end of the season, Jesus is getting harvest rich with worshipers and lions who are running hard after him. So we established Orchard here in the States. We did the same in Zambia, and kind of started out just serving other churches, which is when you were there. We were teaching others how to do kids ministry. We were probably 8 or 9 different kids ministry gatherings around the city every week. And then 2020 hit, and everything changed for a little while in Zambia. Not like it did here, but a little while. Large gatherings were kind of frowned upon, and that's really when the Young Lions were born. We kind of stumbled into this discipleship program. We had developed stuff. We had developed training material over years and years, and finally started using it. And the Young Lions were born. I have a Navy SEAL friend who would always tell me that he was in charge of training at Coronado. And when all the new guys would come in, he'd be telling me about it, and he'd say, "Yeah, these young lions, these young lions." So I decided I'm stealing that, man. So we started a running team and a discipleship group on Saturdays that was just 14 young men. And it really started around running and around a kitchen table, very family oriented. And through that year, we took them through some mission and leadership training. We studied Bible lions from the Old and the New Testament, and we did a lot of running. And now some of those lions are leading our ministry. We're back here in the States trying to build the ministry from this side, and those lions are leading in our absence, it makes us so proud.
And that's the orchard, right? You're now seeing the
Right.
fruit
That's
from
right.
all that time. So
That's right.
I love your focus on building courage, compassion, character. Why did you choose those three values as the foundation of this program?
I read one of Mark Batter. I love Mark Batterson. I've read all his books, and I can't remember which book it was. Maybe All In. A number of years ago, when my boys were still little, when we were still in the States before we ever moved to Zambia, and I remember him talking about establishing a family crest
Mm.
and kind of establishing some of the core family values. And they did some really fun tradition around this, and I thought we got to do that. We have to paint these words on our walls. What are the words I care most about? And as it boiled down, it felt like courage, compassion, and character were what marked our calling and our lives the most. Around that time, I wrote a little children's book that I was using to raise money for some work in Africa. And I sent a copy to then President George W. Bush because his family had been in Zambia about 3 hours from where we ended up living. And I just wanted to thank him for investing in a nation that I care about. So I sent him this children's book to the President of the United States.
No way.
And he sent a letter back thanking me for the book. And in it, he said, America and Americans have always been marked by courage, compassion, and character. And I was like, confirmation,
Wow.
and we're good to go. So I realized then, okay, this is something God's speaking. He can even speak through a president if he wants. And so that became our core values. Obviously, servant leadership is another huge one, and joy, having joy in the middle of the battle is huge for us. But those really cover most of it. And a lot of the training we did with the young lions, a lot of the life lessons came back to one of those. Is this a character issue that we can grow in together today? Is this a fear thing we're facing that we can grow in courage? Is there a way we can get outside ourselves and serve someone compassionately today? And those became the mantra. So our lions, they know those by heart. They repeat them. And then in our later time, we just added the 3 R's. That lions are people who, through courage, character, and compassion, they rise from ashes or disappointment or discouragement or failure. They run hard towards the plans and purposes God has for them and towards wholeness. And then they roar loud with unique voices in their lives, and they make an impact. So we tried to make it memorable, easy, simple, and it's really become something that our family and our ministry family live into.
Mm. Yeah, I, it's like tattooed in my mind, that memory of sitting there with some of those boys,
Yeah.
and just like the hunger for the Lord was so evident.
Yeah.
And a lot of them have come from probably not so great backgrounds, and were just sitting there. Didn't matter about what they had or they didn't have. There was just a profound desire to experience and be a part of pursuing God together. Talk a little bit about somebody that's really found their roar, they've grown into a leader. Talk a little bit about some of these boys.
Yeah. First, I gotta just say thank you. You came in when a lot of the Young Lion stuff was starting and got to be with us in those early days at Whiteson's house. And some of the prophetic prayer that you gifted each one with before you left, we recorded it, we wrote it down, printed it, and gave each one. And those things have been kept and held on to and referred back to. They do remember you, they talk about you. And so that was very important and meaningful for all of us. So thank you. Some of the boys are doing amazing, and I'll get into that. And some have really drifted. It really comes down to, just like with you and I and our own kids, and in every culture of every nation, you just got to choose who you're going to follow. You got to choose how you're going to live. And sometimes the world gets louder and you start thinking that sounds better. And some of our boys have wandered far, and we do have some prodigals out there, even from that initial batch of the ones we poured more into than everybody. And it's heartbreaking because I was just back there. I spent the month of June there, and I was with the ones that are still close because now they're mentoring a younger group that's coming up, and they're leading our church with hundreds of kids. But as we would move around the community, we'd bump into some of the guys that lived with me, and to see how they're living and to see how far they've gone just messed with me and broke my heart. So it's not anything God can't fix, so you can pray with me on that. But some of them have drifted a little. The others are just doing so amazing. I'm sure you'll remember Jack from the earliest days in Zambia. He was like our son. And Jack is now the key leader. He's over the whole team at Orchard in Zambia, overseeing a team of 5 other leaders, which when I left, there were 3 leaders. And now it's expanded to needing 5 leaders because of all the programming and ministry that's happening, which we're proud of. Jack is really great at children's ministry. He leads our shelter home where a number of our junior lions are now living, ones that don't have a home to live in, or they have a dangerous or unfit type of living situation. They can stay with Jack. So he's already, without having his own kids, he's behaving like a father, and it makes us so proud. He's getting married in next year, early next year.
Hey,
So we
come
got to
on.
be back for that. Yeah. So really proud of him. So many. I don't know if you met Joseph, but every time I go, I take Joseph a new instrument, and he just figures it out on YouTube. And he's our worship leader, who now plays harmonica and keyboards and guitar and drums. And he blows my mind. He does a lot of our media, and really proud of so many of those guys. They're just in a place where it's real easy to just follow the model of the compound and get swallowed up in the selfish stuff and hard stuff of life. These guys are buoyant and living above all that and living for something big. I'm beyond proud of all of them.
That's really special to hear
Yeah,
those stories. That's
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
So if you're listening, you're on the God Reports podcast, and for God Reports, we talk about what God's doing. So I really want to shift a little bit to stories about God's hand in the program. You know, have you witnessed personally any moments where God worked in a miraculous or unexpected way for you or for one of the lions?
Yeah, it was pretty constant, just especially taking these boys basically from the streets when we started, and watching the process of them start to internalize and believe the stuff they were hearing. They would just start to live different. At first, they couldn't believe it. Many of them thought they weren't worthy of it. They had done too much wrong. It was a story for those heroes of the faith from thousands of years ago, and it wasn't theirs. We got to see and watch the transformation of it was almost like starting a feeding program. You can pretty quickly see a physical transformation, and it was
Right.
about that fast. We were seeing the beginnings of spiritual transformation. We always valued really surprise little moments of softness. Uh, we had some pretty rough boys, and like you said, some brutal, rough upbringings, full of different types of abuse and abandonment, a lot of crime in their lives in the past, and just hard shells. And if we were in a worship service or just a family gathering, and one of them would just we I remember specifically one of our guys, I won't name him, but he just we were in a worship service at a local church, and he just started to cry.
Mm.
And Heidi and I just went and sat with him, and we didn't say anything. We just sat with him as he cried. And at the end, he said, I don't know where these feelings came from, but I'm sad that I haven't had parents. I miss my mom. And we got to just kind of love on him through that and coach him through that and tell him that feeling those emotions were okay, and you
Yeah.
don't have to be a hard guy all the time. I don't know. Those little things pop in my mind as miracles because of who and the type of guys we were working with.
As you're sharing, I'm like, it seems like God is not only working in these boys, but also your heart as a leader, as you're kind of shepherding them. Like he's been surprising you with his presence as well and
Yeah.
his provision of bringing the boys along. What has that been like for you personally?
It's been humbling because if you're going to tell people to be real and to live as men of character, you got to be a man of character too, which means you got to own some of your own stuff and talk about it. And so we got good at talking about our shortcomings and our downfalls, and just crying through it, praying through it together. And I think that that really bonded us, but it has really made me probably more transparent than I would have chosen to be initially. But I'm glad for that now because, man, who wants to hide their junk? It's better to just get it out there and realize you're not the only dude that ever struggled with that or whatever. But that's been huge. Watching the multiplication of it has been a real God journey. Just seeing how we could put a pretty large, I mean, it's a small ministry compared to some of the big boys, but there's a lot going on and we have hundreds of people in our care. And to leave that with who were just a few years ago street guys, and they're young and haven't had any experience in leadership, and to see them ministering wholeheartedly, to see them growing the ministry without us, that multiplication, to watch them mentoring the next guys coming behind them has been a miracle. And we're in awe of how God is going to build his church with or without us. He's actively doing mighty things that are miracles we shouldn't just walk past. And so I honestly could talk on this for a real long time. It would bore you to death.
Somebody's listening right now who's struggling to find some purpose in their life, and you help people clarify their personal mission and purpose. So what would you kind of say to somebody out there?
I would say first that you got to get around some other people that if you're feeling like you're not living the kind of life you want to be living, find some people who are and link up with them. I would also throw in there that you should do some hard things together. Somehow the running, it's not going to be for everybody. It could be something different, but for us, doing that physical thing led to so many spiritual conversations, and doing it together. I was running with the boys. Any miles they ran, I ran. I was doing a lot of running when I was in Zambia just to keep my health and clear my head. And on one of my runs, I bumped into a guy, James, who would become one of our main young lions. And I had known him when he was a little boy when I was there before. And I had heard that him and his brother were fugitives from the law, let's say, and on the run a little bit. And I bumped into James and I said, "Hey, meet me here tomorrow and we'll run together." And we parted ways, and I thought, what a terrible opener. You might not even have shoes. And James showed up, and we ran some miles together, and we just talked through where he was at, how he was living in some regret. And then the next day I said, let's run early because church is tomorrow. We'll go to church together. And he showed up, and I realized it doesn't matter what we're doing. People want to do something together. They want to be part of something and be seen and be in community. And so I started inviting others to run with us, and it exploded. So our Young Lions running team now is competing regionally all over central Zambia, and our younger guys, especially the juniors, are tearing it up. Like we had a 14-year-old win an adult race in Chingola last year, and he actually won a cash prize. So pretty crazy. Yeah. We have
so
some
cool.
great runners. Yeah. So running was just a discipleship tool and a relationship tool. But I would just tell someone, find people who might seem like they have a life hack or they're doing something you want to do, and get up close to them, find mentors and find a community, start there. And then don't be afraid to just go all in and get outside yourself and do something for a greater group of people. One of my favorite stories from another Navy SEAL that I've read a lot about was he was struggling in Buds in Hell Week, thinking he's not going to survive it. He's not getting enough sleep. His ear hurt from being in the water. And he looked, it was one of the rare moments they could catch a nap. And he looked at a neighbor in the cot next to him that was really struggling, and he had some foot problems. And so this guy decided, I'm going to help him with his feet. And then all of his stuff started to wash away. He focused on someone else, and suddenly it was time to get to work again, and he got through the wall. And he realized, when I put the focus off of me and onto serving others, there's something that happens in me that releases me. And so serving others is another key element of what we do, and what I think helps people get healthy if they're not already. So that's, again, there. It's hard to know where to draw the lines here, because there's just a lot to talk about in each one, but those are a few that come to mind.
How do you stay motivated? Are there podcasts you listen to, books? It seems like you're just pulling from a lot of like military background. What does that look like for you personally as a leader?
Yeah, I do read a ton. I feel like I've learned so much from reading. I hated reading in school. I never even read what I was commanded to read. I just faked my way through it. And then at some point in my 30s, I just decided, if I'm going to grow, I got to be reading. So I read a lot of all kinds of stuff. I read some Christian leadership stuff, but lots of military leadership. That's probably my favorite. I think it has a lot to do with life in general, but missions as well. That's why I reached out to this Navy SEAL friend, Rourke Denver, years ago. He wrote 2 books that blew my mind, and I was using them as I was training bush pastors in the far north, just kind of building lesson plans around his book, obviously with the Bible included. And some of these guys didn't even have, they had a few pages of a torn out Bible from somewhere else, and that's what they were leading whole churches on. So obviously we provided them with a Bible in their own language, but some of the leadership principles I was taking from Rourke Denver. So I wrote him an email. I'd never met him, and I just said, hey, I know you were in battle, and a lot of this is hard won kind of wisdom that works in battle, but let me tell you, I'm in a different kind of battle, and it applies over here in Zambia in a spiritual way as well. And to my surprise, he wrote right back.
Wow.
And I just asked him, hey, could I just pick your brain from time to time? I went and found a mentor. I found someone who was leading like I wanted to lead, and started bothering the heck out of him. And so he offered me a lot of help, and then we ended up getting to meet and have become friends and brothers. And that's a great gift to me, because he's just a brilliant leadership mind. So that kind of thing I do. I knock on doors and bother people that I don't know yet, but that I think we should definitely be friends. But
What's
yeah,
the book? What were the books?
one of them is called Damn Few, and the other one is called Worth Dying For. And they were both kind of accounts of his military history and life, but also leadership points that he didn't want America to lose, because he watched the best of us in action in harm's way. And it's really beautiful stuff. And he's a devoted guy, and a powerful dad. And so those were great books. I read a lot of different types of stuff, and that helps me a bunch for sure. And I listen to podcasts, and like I said early on, Mark Batterson, his teaching style interests me, because he pulls in biography and history and science and all of it, and just he's a good guy to learn how to weave a story from too.
So give us like a 2 or 3 nuggets that you like would give some of the young lions or these bush pastors from your reading that would inspire you and encourage them, and what would that be?
Um, well, the first thing that comes to mind, and I don't know if this is for a listener or the young lions, but Rourke Denver talked a lot about training guys for the battlefield, and he said it was important for him to get young men in a gunfight early, just to start practicing the reality of what they're going to get into, but also to see how they were responding. So
Hmm.
we took that to heart. And that's why we were willing to hand over our ministry to really young guys, because as soon as they chose to connect and commit to the discipleship, we started handing them leadership. And there were messes everywhere, of course, but man, I was able to coach through it, and I feel like they got on an accelerated course of leadership because we weren't gripping super tightly our leadership. We were giving it away, and I think that has been one of the secrets of our ministry growth is just giving away leadership. Obviously, with a degree of wisdom of who you're handing it to. Another nugget that comes from running is I can't remember who I first heard this from, but I've studied it and it's a thing that you're supposed to run with open or loose hands. And when I first started running, I was like kung fu grip, just balled fists, and the tension that it creates up into your shoulders and neck changes your running posture. It can change your gait. It can change your breathing. And I thought, what a strange and small fix to really go to the next level. Just loosen your grip. And I think that applies to life and ministry and leadership. Just open hands. Like if I've got gripped hand, there's no place for me to receive the more that God wants to pour in. But if I'm running loose and I have open hands, it's going to freely flow from me and then back into me from a good and kind God. So that's another
So
one
good.
we talk about a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so good. So you just mentioned you've returned, you've given the ministry over to some of these young boys. Walk us through what that process kind of looked like and what you're doing now to facilitate this from abroad.
So we knew our family needed to move back to America and still be engaged in Zambia, and for the rest of time and eternity, it's our hope that we're connected to Orchard Ministries Zambia and beyond. But we knew that our time living there full time was coming to an end for a number of reasons. And one of those reasons was our young leaders would better step up with me out of the way. Leaning on me was the easy thing, and I could kind of help solve all the problems if I was right there. Now that wasn't the only reason we did it, but it was a benefit that came along. So we moved back to the States, creeping up on 2 years ago now, with the plan that we would go back frequently and that we would work here part time on Orchard. And when we moved back, I thought, I don't want to work in a church, just Sunday to Sunday type church. So I went and got my EMT license and started working on ambulances. And then I went through a fire academy and got picked up by a fire department. So I was working as a firefighter, EMT, and serving our community that way up until the end of May. And I just realized, man, I'm not going to be able to go to Zambia for a long time with this schedule. I also was a little saddened that it felt like I was going one direction suddenly, and my family, who we had always done everything together, was going a different direction. And so uh, I also felt challenged by God. Like there's some dreams that you left hanging in regards to Orchard and Zambia that part time's not going to do it. So June 1st, I quit fire and all that and jumped back in full time into ministry. And so right now for us, that looks like constant phone calls with our team on the ground. Um, Once a month, we have an all team gathering, but throughout the week, we're talking to different ones about different things. We are still kind of setting the vision and the calendar, helping them with that. I was there for the month of June, just kind of vision casting through the end of the year and what next year is going to bring, talking to them about how we grow and how we're careful with that. And I was scoping out some land to buy because we're hoping to buy our very first Roar campus, a base where this mission and leadership training could take place and where we could build lions that are going to go to all of Zambia's neighbors as missionaries. And so we found land, and right now I'm in talks with a lawyer over in Zambia about purchasing our first chunk of land, and I'll probably have to go there this fall to sign some paperwork. And as a family, we hope to go there in the first quarter of next year. But yeah, those are some biggies that we're working on. I'm pumped for you to come see the base. It'll be great. It's big enough to have a whole quarter-mile running track on the inside, and
Wow, really?
yeah, it's a monster. Yeah. That'd be really great.
Wow,
So
this is
pumped
cool.
about that. And we're having to get creative. We're good. I mean, experienced at least, maybe not that good, but experienced on the ground doing the mission stuff. But on this side of it, having to be the administrative guy who is trying to figure out social media in his 40s and all that fun stuff, I'm having to do better at that and writing a lot, trying to develop some just different things that we can make available for people, resources uh, that we've used over the years, and finally packaging them and making them available. And we're offering some coaching as well, getting some certifications, excuse me, in coaching. And yeah, hoping to finish a book in the next few months, make that available early next year, that I've been working on for 5 years. So
Come on.
yeah.
What's the book about? Can you share anything?
Basically, it's going to be some conglomeration of our stories of lessons learned and given in Zambia, but basically coming back to becoming lions and raising lions, how we were meant to rise, run, and roar, and just helping people find their unique roar, and telling people that they're more dangerous and more valuable than they realize, and they just have no idea. Sometimes they just need to be reminded, and it sets them on a new path. We've seen that happen with our lions, and so we wanted a broader audience to hear that. So I'm excited to tell the stories of some of our guys and some of the great things
Cool.
that we've seen and learned. But that's what that'll be about.
How did the kids get inspired? Are they involved?
Our kids locked in with those young lions like brothers. It was very hard to leave for that reason. There was some pain that had to be worked through because they were leaving family behind, even though we were coming home to family. Um, so they're all in. Um, a couple of them got to go last year with Heidi on a trip, and then I went alone this year. But it's still just a part of who we are. They're connected to the guys, and so when we go as a family, we're hoping to stay for a few months. We still homeschool the guys that are still in school so that we have that flexibility. Um, and then at church, our local church here, Heidi, even while I was with the fire department, Heidi has been the youth pastor, kind of junior high through early high school. And so our boys help with everything from media to set up and tear down. They're part of it. And now that I'm back in the picture, I'm teaching there a lot. And so we're doing what we did with Lions in Zambia at a local church here in Las Cruces, all together as a family. And it just feels more natural. I miss some of the fire stuff, but this feels like who we are and what we're supposed to be doing. So I feel like it was the right move.
I love that you as a father are kind of together. You guys are inviting your family into a better story for their lives. You're inviting them into the running. You're inviting the boys into being a part of setup and tear down, and you're just it's there's a bigger purpose to you
You're right.
guys, to the Kohn family. I just love that that inspiring way of doing things, and
Thank
it's
you.
pretty cool to see you guys as parents step into that and lead and invite them into that storyline.
We're really proud of them, man. They go all in. Eli plans to, he's a senior this year. He wants to take a gap year and spend it at Orchard in Zambia, just doing whatever needs to be done. Owen just got back from Madagascar. One thing we're glad we did was show our kids there's a great big world out there. It's not just like Las Cruces. And so he had to do an internship, and where most kids signed up within New Mexico for a wildland internship or something, he signed up in Madagascar and got accepted and spent a
Of
few
course
months
you
over
did,
there.
man.
Yeah, of course he did. I told Heidi we did this to ourselves, but they do have
So
a
cool.
big world view. They work so hard. We would never have a ministry of with the young lions without having four sons and four young lions of our own. That's why it was born. That's who we attracted because of who we were, and it has a lot to do with our own boys. So we're proud of those guys.
If there's somebody watching that has a family and it's like, I mean, you went to the mission field with four boys. What
Mhm.
is that? What encouragement would you have for a missionary family feeling that call, but a little intimidated by going abroad, all
Yeah.
the things, walk us through what that, any encouragement that you would have for somebody like that.
Our youngest was 1 year old when we moved to Zambia the first time, and he learned how to walk in the Atlanta airport while we were waiting for our Johannesburg flight. So we went with some little guys, and we had people who, I don't know if they thought they were being helpful, but they were trying to warn us about malaria and all the scary things. And we thought, this is not helpful. Like, you're stating the obvious, but also we feel like we're going to be okay. If God's doing this thing, he's going to take care of us. He's got a plan for malaria. Um and the truth is, the fear of things is way worse than if the things actually usually happen. And all of us did get malaria, and we had a couple boys had some rough bouts with it, and um we were nervous, and people prayed and they got better. And I would just say to young families, it's not worth putting things on pause or waiting for another phase of life because you have young kids. If you're feeling called to go, go. And your kids will help build your ministry, and it will build something into your family that you would never trade for, because our family, like you said a second ago, is totally invested in this. It used to be, in the early days, it was my vision to live in Africa. I would go on short-term trips alone, leave my family behind. I would come back with all these experiences, and Heidi never felt part of it. And I never took my boys. And I started pushing, we got to move to this place. We got to move to this place. And I realized I'm pushing too hard. God challenged me, would you lay down your Isaac for a time and let me work this in my timing? And as I did that, he sent me to other nations that I wouldn't have gone to because I felt like I might be cheating on Zambia. And then in that time, Heidi and I built Unity, and it became a family dream to go. And when we did that, we knew it was going to be for our boys too, even though they were little. It wasn't just for us, it was for our boys. And doing ministry as a family was the joy of my life. Just watching my kids uh, host and care for and pray for, and just it's just the good stuff. It's what you want from your kids. And so if there's families considering it, it's worth its weight in gold to just go and serve, even short term, just to get a feel if for the place or for your role in that place. Is so valuable. And I would like Orchard to even create more opportunities for families to kind of get their toes in the water on mission.
I love what you said about just kind of laying down what you felt like was something for you, and but then God brought it full circle that it actually became a family calling,
Yeah,
which
I
is
did.
beautiful.
Way more
That
beautiful
that
than
is,
just me.
you didn't just charge out there, you had the humility to lay it down before the Lord, and it just came came right back to
Well, I
the
got
whole
I
family.
got to a place of humility. I was fighting him on it for a little while, like, hey, I think I might know better than you.
Uh-huh.
But I
Uh-huh.
got there, yeah. And
That's cool.
yeah, we built a ministry around what was natural for our family, and it was because of our sons. And now the best part of the ministry we ever did was the Young Lions, and it's basically my son's ministry. So what if we had been afraid to go because we had little boys? It just, it's not worth stopping for that, for a little bit of fear. Just pressing through is so worth it.
I love that. So if there's somebody that's inspired by what you guys are doing and wants to get involved, how can they support the Young Lions or the work in Zambia?
We would love anyone to just join in with us. We need prayer support. We need financial support. We're hoping to organize a way for more people to come and experience our work in Zambia. That's a little further down the road, but orchardministries.org is our website. Orchard Ministries Zambia is also our Facebook tagline there. And so we're trying to keep those a little better updated. I'm writing weekly little encouragements and devotional thoughts that include Zambian stories that you can sign up for on our website. And we do need we need ongoing monthly partners. We need people to help jump in and help us build this Roar campus. It's not just for us; it's for these Lions to have a base where they can impact the rest of Zambia and Africa at large from. So you'd be getting into something big and exciting, and that's the best place to do it. Yeah, my email and cell phone is all over our website, so you can reach out to me from there as well.
Awesome. Well, Chris, it's been an honor hearing about the journey, the incredible work God's been doing in these boys in Zambia. Thanks so much for coming on. And
My
it's
pleasure.
good for me to hear too, after going there so many years, to see the continued work that God's doing, and that it will inspire future generations.
That's our dream, and you were in on the ground floor, man. You're stuck with us. We love you very much. Really grateful to get to just chat with you. Thank you for giving me a platform. This is my favorite subject. I could go and go and go, but we're really proud of what God's done and lucky to be a part of it.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Best of the God Reports podcast. If you feel moved by Chris's story, be sure to check them out and find ways to get involved. And until next time, keep looking for where God is moving in your life. And remember, He provides and cares for those He loves. Thanks, Chris.